idolatry. If somebody were to bring to the common man on the street today an evidence from the Quran and the Sunnah to correct one of their practices, the response that that person will say is, this is not my tradition, this is not my custom, this is not what my parents were doing, and my parents couldn't have been wrong. This response has been documented in the Quran 1,400 years ago. Documented in 6 or 7 different verses of the Quran. In what context? An example of it is in Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 104, in which Allah says, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ تَعَالَوْا إِلَى مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ وَإِلَى الرَّسُولِ. If you, Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tell the pagans, come to what Allah has revealed and to His Messenger, the Quran and Sunnah. قَالُوا حَسْبُنَا مَا وَجَدْنَا عَلَيْهِ آبَاءَنَا. They will say, they will respond, what we found our foreparents doing is sufficient for us. What we found our foreparents doing is sufficient for us. Allah goes on to say, أَوَلَوْ كَانَ آبَاؤُهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ شَيْئًا وَلَا يَهْتَدُونَ. Even though their foreparents didn't know anything, nor were they rightly guided. The question we should raise is, for those who say this is not our custom, this is not what our parents were doing, we ask, were your parents Sahaba? Were your parents present when the Quran was revealed? So, there have been many generations from that time. So can we trust what your parents were doing to be what in fact Prophet Muhammad brought and his companions maintained and handed down? No, we have no guarantee of that. That response is the traditionalist response, which Allah describes as the foundation of pagan thought. It is the resistance, the foundation for resistance to the truth. And when we look in Muslim society at the basis for the tradition, and there are many different traditions, some of them are inherited traditions. In pre-Islamic times, people were doing it, people continue to do it now. Some of them are adopted traditions. Muslims, when they came in contact with other societies, they adopted their traditions. Some of them are based on innovations in the religion. Mystical traditions where they introduce a new way of thinking, a new way of practice of the religion. Or some of them are factionalists. They're based on factions, different groupings, etc., which set up in the society, and people vying with each other. Now, some of these issues we may consider, especially if we go back and look at the issues of adopted and inherited practices, we may look at them as being minor. Why do we have to make an issue about it? Well, I would say that, I'll give you some examples. When Prophet said, "Man ahdatha fi amrina ma laysa minhu fahuwa radd," whoever brings something new in this religion which is not a part of it, it is rejected. He said that because innovation in the religion is evil. As he said, it is dalala, misguidance. And it is harmful. This is why it has been prohibited. This is what led Christianity from the Islam which Prophet Isa alayhi salam brought. It evolved from Islam into Christianity, another religion. This change took place by way of innovation. People came into the teachings and brought with them their traditions from Rome and from Greece, etc., etc. I will take a couple of issues just to show you the harm that can come out of these practices. We know in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, in this area, the custom is among Muslims that when their daughters are getting married, mahar is given to the proposed husband. we know in Islam the mahar is given by the male to the female to show his readiness, preparedness to look after the female. But in those societies, the common practice, not in every place, but in most places, is that the family of the female gives wealth, money to the male to marry. Now, this is Hindu tradition. It is Christian tradition also. But particularly there is Hindu tradition. The Hindus do exactly the same thing. Now, what is the result of this tradition in modern times among the Hindus? That when the husband, after being promised all these things by the family of his wife, he doesn't receive these things. So something happens to the family is not able to give the necessary wealth or whatever. He's upset. He demands it. She can't bring it. He gets greedy. Sometimes she brought it, but he wants more. Tell your parents to give me some more money. I want a new car or whatever. She can't do it. What does he do? He conspires with his mother. And they pour gasoline over the wife and they set her on fire. These are called bride burning. Hundreds, literally hundreds of Hindu women are burnt alive every year because of this principle of dowry. And many mother-in-laws, they talk about how many articles talk about how many of them are in jail for this. Now we can see the obvious evil of it. Now Muslims who have adopted this tradition, we would say this couldn't happen to a Muslim. However, there was an article in the Gulf News, because I'm living in the Middle East, right? I took it from the Gulf News newspaper. February this year, the title of the article was "Woman Burned to Death." Dhaka. In Dhaka. A greedy husband burned to death his young wife at Sikpara in the city following a feud over dowry, the police said. When I first started to read it, I said, oh, here comes another Hindu burning his wife. But then it went on to say, they said that Zahir Mia. I was shocked. Zahir Mia poured kerosene over the body of his wife Shahnaz, 20 years old, and set her on fire on Sunday. She died in the Dhaka Medical Hospital yesterday. So we see the harm that can come from these kind of practices. This is bodily harm. There is religious harm which comes from this belief. I have been addressed by many from that area about when a man is responsible to make Hajj. They ask me, if a man's daughter is not married, isn't he excused from making Hajj? The common belief. As I mentioned, let's finish this point because the Adhan is going to come. Will they pray the Salah immediately after the Adhan? Immediately after. So we'll continue after the Salah. The question that is asked, as I said, is a man whose daughter is not married responsible to make Hajj? If he doesn't have the money he has, they believe the money he has should be used to ensure that his daughter gets married. So if he hasn't got his daughter married, he's not obliged to make Hajj. So that now, this requirement, which in Islam, according to Islamic teachings, if a man has the means, economic means to make Hajj, it's compulsory on him. They are now cancelling the compulsory nature of Hajj because he hasn't got his daughter married. This is religious harm. Because Prophet said, one who has the means to make Hajj and does not make Hajj, delays the Hajj, it makes no difference to Allah whether he dies a Christian or a Zoroastrian. So this is serious. This is a serious area in which the religion of the individual or even the social life of the individual can be harmed. Where tradition are not corrected. Another example, leaving the Indian subcontinent over to Africa. There was an article in June of this year, heading of the article, "Son held for killing mother" in Krina, Egypt. Okay, I knew there are about 20 million Christian Egyptians. Out of the 60-odd million Egyptians, 20 million are Christians. So I figured I saw the son held killing mother. A 22-year-old son beheaded and dismembered his widowed mother when he found out that she had secretly remarried, breaking with tradition in southern Egypt. Police here said yesterday. When I read that, I said, oh, probably some Christian, traditions, they're killing their mothers over these things. But here in June, began son held for killing mother in Krina, Egypt. A 22-year-old son beheaded and dismembered his widowed mother when he found out that she had secretly remarried, breaking with tradition in southern Egypt, police here said yesterday. And as I said, when I first read this article, knowing that there is a large Christian population in Egypt, I assumed that it was one of the Christians involved in this kind of activity. But to my surprise, the article went on to say, Salah Ahmed Hassan, helped by one of his uncles, forced Samira Salam, 35 years old, into the village cemetery in Naqada, a hamlet north of the southern resort of Luxor, where they strangled, beheaded, and dismembered the woman, the police said. They said the woman was pregnant. Hassan and Samira's brother were detained for questioning, and they admitted their crimes. This woman, Samira, was murdered by her son and her brother. Why? Because she broke with the tradition. What was this tradition? The tradition in southern Egypt was based on a myth, an ancient Egyptian myth from the time of the pharaohs, where the goddess Isis, they had this goddess, they believed in, the goddess Isis, her brother Seth desired her. So he killed her husband Osiris in order to get her as his wife. But Isis refused to marry him and instead raised her son Horus. Horus is the eagle or falcon symbol in Egyptian mythology. He raised her son Horus. When he got old enough, then he avenged the death of his father and killed Seth. This legend, the cult of the worship of Isis, began in southern Egypt and it spread to the rest of Egypt. This was the home ground for this particular belief. And that belief, that is from ancient times, thousands and thousands of years ago, remains embedded in the present-day practice of Muslims in southern Egypt. So that a woman, if she becomes widowed, it is forbidden for her to remarry. So much so that we have this article of a son and a woman's brother cooperating to murder, dismember, cut her to pieces in a cemetery. These are just a couple of examples of how customs can lead to harm, where these customs are against Islamic teaching. Because, of course, Prophet Muhammad married widows. Some of his wives, Salama, was a widow. So it is totally against Islamic principles. And the example from Jacob, Prophet Muhammad gave mahar to his wife. Their families didn't give him anything. This is not the way of Islam. So once Muslims adopt or maintain these customs, which are from pagan times or pagan cultural practices, which are against Islamic teachings, then they will harm that society. Now, Islam doesn't oppose every single custom. There is a place in Islamic law referred to as urf, which deals with customs. But these are the customs which do not conflict with Islamic principles and values. Those customs do identify people and their cultures in different parts of the world. Islam is not opposed to them, as long as they do not conflict with Islamic values. The other two areas of traditionalism is one, the branch of mysticism which evolved in the Muslim world, in which it was promoted that the human soul was divine and that it could link with God. Names were given to it. Names like Fana, Ittihad, Arabic names were given. But the essential concept is pagan. It is a concept found in the ancient Greeks. Plato, in his Symposium, spoke about it. The Hindus have the same belief in nirvana, moksha actually of the Hindus, nirvana of the Buddhists. Same concept of the soul, human soul, uniting with the divine soul. Now, this in and of itself is innovation in the religion, in religious thought. But the greatest evil which came out of such beliefs is intermediacy, where people encourage Muslims to pray to others besides Allah, where intermediaries were set up between man and Allah. The fundamental teachings of Islam is that human beings can address Allah directly. Ud'uni astajib lakum, as Allah says, call on me and I will answer your prayer. He didn't say call on so-and-so or call on my awliya or my anybody and I will answer your prayer. He said call on me. And Prophet has said, "Ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah." Dua, when you raise your hands and you call, this is call out, supplicate to God. This is worship. Whoever you are calling on, you are worshiping. It doesn't matter about the philosophical rationale that you may give to it. Hindu philosophers, if you ask them about worshipping their idol, they will tell you, we're not worshipping this actual idol you see in front of us. We are worshipping God through this idol. Don't we go through these motions with the idol, the puja, and all we do these things we do? Really, this is not for the physical idol. We made it, we know. This is a way of worshipping God. So philosophically, they have rationalized their actions. But the fact of the matter is, they are idolaters. That is the fact of the matter. Christians, if you ask them, you're worshipping a man, Jesus. They say, no. We're not worshipping Jesus, the man. We're worshipping Jesus, who was God as a man. This is the rationale. There is a rationale behind it. So they argue, no, we're worshiping God. God became a man, so we're not worshiping the human aspect of Jesus, we're worshiping the divine that was Jesus. But the fact of the matter is, they're worshiping a man, and it's idolatry. Similarly, those who say, you, brother, are sinful, your iman is dirty. How can you raise your hand and expect God to answer your prayers? No, you should pray to somebody who is pure, who did not live the kind of life you have lived, who is closer to God, closer to Allah. You pray through this person, and your prayers will be answered by Allah. The reality, yes, this is a rationale. There's a line of reasoning. And when they give this reasoning, they will say, well, it's just the same way. If you want to see the president of Trinidad and Tobago, you can't just go marching down to his office and bang on his door and come walking into the office. No. You have to go and see some other people who are in positions of authority, and they will, work your message through to the president. Same thing. The reality is that when they do that, they make Allah like human beings. They make Allah like human beings. No, Allah is beyond that. That is in our human affairs, yes, we need intermediaries to get to people of authority, etc. But Allah knows. Because if we're going to use this line of argument, then we have to accept the argument of the Christians when they say, when explaining why God is three in one, that God, like an egg, they have the egg theory. The egg, it has a shell. It has a white, it has a yolk. It's these three parts that make the egg. But it's one egg. But we say, that's an egg. That's not Allah. That's not God, that's an egg. So you have made God like an egg, like His creation. We don't accept that. Or they like to put out the tree theory. The tree theory, what's the tree theory? God is like a tree. The tree has branches, it has a trunk, and it has roots. But it's one tree. We say, that's the tree, that's not God. God is not made up of parts and pieces. This is His creation. It is made up of parts and pieces. When you try to make Allah like that, then you're making Him like His creation. In the same way, when those who want to argue that we need to go through somebody to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have made Him like His creation. And this is the greatest evil that came out of that movement. Now there are people within that movement who were righteous people. People like Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, who was a known scholar, Hanbali scholar of his own time, a righteous man. But after his death, people changed his biography. They made up stories about him, elevating him from the status of the normal human being. So you can now read books which describe Sheikh Abdul Qadir as when he was born in Ramadan. And what did he do as a baby? Born in Ramadan. He didn't used to drink milk from his mother's breast during the daylight hours of Ramadan. After sunset, then he would start to drink. We don't have this recorded of Prophet Muhammad or the Sahaba. But we're going to have this recorded about somebody else. So, he, unfortunately, with these other stories that were built up, but this is only the beginning, the tip of the iceberg. If you wanted to read all the stories that were attributed to Abdul Qadir, in the end, Abdul Qadir became an intermediary. He was given the title Ghawsi Azam, Al-Ghaws Al-A'zam, the greatest source of help. So people in times of difficulty, calamity, they will instead of calling out, Ya Allah, Oh Allah help me, they will say, Ya Abdul Qadir, help. I hate me. This is the greatest evil which came out of Islam. The last source of tradition, the last source of tradition is factionalism. And the factionalism initially became evident in what came to be known as the schools of Islamic law, the madhab. Now the scholars of that early generation of scholars who rose to the occasion of educating the ummah, whose students studied under them and studied under various scholars, they did not intend to lay down a particular school which was to be followed exclusively.